Okay, so I've had at least 7 people message me over the off season about how to do an Elantra brake upgrade and the parts needed for it. And I've seen a bunch of questions online, so I do have a set here that I want to do up for Bathurst as a spare set. So I thought no better time to actually pull it out, rebuild it, and show you how I rebuild them. And the difference between a set of XL front brakes and an Elantra XD setup. And why I think the Elantra is a much better option to go with. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is a XL front brake setup that I took off the car. I put this together when I first got the car. This upright and this brake package. Now, it obviously doesn't have the caliper on it. I took the calipers off when I changed over to the Elantra, but you get the general idea. If I lift this over, okay, you'll see here that we've got our all the points of connection that join up to the chassis. These parts here are where the caliper bolts onto. The steering arm goes there. No, steering arm goes there. Ball joint goes there, and this is where it connects up to the suspension. So obviously you'll see here it says X3. So we know it's from a Hyundai XL X3. The main difference between an Elantra and an XL setup is with the XLs, the brake rotor is a captive brake rotor, so it's actually essentially pressed together with the hub. Okay, that's why you got the bolts. These bolts screw into the back onto the rotor, hold the hub on. Everything is pressed together, and when you do a brake rotor change on an XL, you're pretty much changing bearings every single time you do it, because when you press it apart, you're pretty much destroying the bearings. I haven't found any other way to do it. There probably is a way. I don't know if anyone has any success doing it that way. But every time I changed brake rotors, it was changing bearings as well. Now, bearings can go from anywhere from 50 to 80 bucks. But it becomes a bit of an issue when every time you want to change a rotor, you've got to change a bearing. This is an Elantra XD setup. You'll notice that there's no bolts holding the hub to the rotor. That's because this is essentially what I call a slip fit. Take the caliper off, slide the old disc off, put a new one on, and you are essentially good to go. Put the caliper back on, and off you go. So much easier. It's actually, if you look at the two of them, it's a bigger brake rotor, it's a bigger brake caliper, and a bigger brake pad. But all the connection points, if I can flip this over, are exactly the same as an XL. So you've got your caliper mounting points, your ball joint for the lower control arm, your arm for your steering arm, and then you've got your suspension mounting points. So they're exactly the same as the X3, as the Elantra XD. Now, if you have a look right there, it does say XD, meaning it came off the Elantra XD car. So our goal today is to rebuild this big hunk here. Now, they are heavier than the XLs, but what you sacrifice in convenience, you gain in a bit of weight. I personally love these because I feel like I can brake deeper, brake later, there's no problem. So we're going to rip this apart. I'll show you how I clean them up and make them look half decent again, rebuild the calipers, and then put new wheel studs in them. So let's start pulling this one apart, and I'll show you how we rebuild them. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the caliper off. Okay, we've got 17mm bolts, okay, up here. So we're just going to get our impact out and see if we can drive those off. All right, keep those bolts and spring washers handy because you will be needing those to put it back together. So now we can pull the caliper off, and what I generally like to do is have a look what pads are in it. If we can see any markings. They look like they might have been half decent. And that one may take a bit of time to get out. They are very well stuck in there. There we go. So it looked like they had a bit of meat left on them, but we'll stick those to the side. We will not need those. So what we're going to do is, before we actually get into this part of it with the actual upright and pulling that apart, we're going to just rip everything apart on the caliper, because I do clean these. Clean them up, put them in a solution, clean them up. Any other brake fluid that comes out of it, just wipe up. There's a special solution I do use to get it all done. I believe this one is a 13. Nope. Might be wrong. What have we got here? 14. 14. Don't worry about your seals or anything like that, because you will be putting new seals in. New pins. That one is cooked, so we will have to get that out. Pull the slide pins out. If we can get the seal off. There we go. Done. These retaining clips, take those out. You will not be needing those. I don't run them in my car. Put those to the side. There's half your caliper done. Next we just have to get our piston out. Banjo bolt. All the fluid, excess brake fluid that was in there. Right. So, next one we need is an air compressor, and we're going to push that piston out. So, what I use for pushing the piston out is just compressed air. I just use a little tiny four-wheel drive tyre inflator. It works really, really well. You don't need much pressure unless it's really seized in there. Just jam that in there, turn it on, and I'll push it out. So I'll turn the pump on. Here we go. There we go. First one done. Clean up the mess. That's our piston. And it looks like it was absolutely filthy inside. You can see inside there's a bunch of rust. We'll actually get that out with the solution we use. And then pull the dust seal out, and there is a rubber seal in there that we will get out. Once I get a bunch of brake fluid in there. That's the messy job. There's the rubber seal inside. Now, I do know some people just run this and not the dust seal. I prefer to run the dust seal. It's personal preference. That's done. So now we can put that aside. We just have to take our We'll bolt over here off for our bleed nipple. It's a 10mm spanner here. Right. Doesn't look too bad. Probably give that a clean up as well. That's all right. Now that that caliper's ready to be cleaned, along with this part, so we'll stick it in a bucket and we'll start pulling apart everything else and make sure that gets all clean, and should be good to go. So I'll get the other one apart now. Alright, so as you can see, we've got all our caliper components in our bucket down here. Pistons, like everything apart from the brake rotors and all that kind of stuff in our bucket. And we're going to add a solution of Metal Rescue, rust remover bath. This stuff will not eat the metal. It is safe. It is awesome. I used it on my other set. And I can't express how much in 24 hours most of that rust will be off, and you'll be left with a pretty clean kind of surface. Good enough to go racing with, right? So you're not going to have all the rust and stuff in there. So all you do is just pour it in. If parts don't go submerged, just pull them out. That was a bit ambitious of me. Stick them on the side. Like so. Make sure they're fully submerged under the solution. Like so. And then you let that sit for, what does it say? Moderate rust up to 8 hours, heavy rust up to 24. So, you know, it'll take some time. You can reuse it. So that is just because I haven't used all my parts in that solution. You will be able to reuse it. Generally, after I do a set of calipers, I just toss it out. It is eco-friendly, which is even better. This stuff here is available at Repco. I believe it was $77 a bottle. It was on sale for $50. Picked up a bottle just for this reason. So you should have it covered. So just find something to cover it so it doesn't evaporate, and then we'll get started on the rest of the brakes. Alright, so now we're left with our just our uprights without the calipers on them. Alright, we got the brake rotors off. I had to drill them, drill the countersunk bolts off because I actually don't use them when we're racing. So I'm just going to put some penetrating fluid down the threads to see if we can't get these. Oh, they look like they're turning, that's nice. Let's see if we can get those out. Oh, that one's coming out easy. Perfect. This one's coming out good. Throw that out. Nice. Both coming out easy. That makes life much easier. Alright. Now we can flip these over and start pressing everything out. And take it over to our press over there and we'll get them pulled apart. Alright, so this is where it becomes a bit challenging because you've got to perch the front knuckle up on essentially some plate to then push the hub out. So we've got it perched up there pretty well. And now we're just going to get a bit of a press tool here and put it on the inside. You don't want to put it on the bearing, you want to put it on the hub to push the hub out. So let's see how we go here. And it may fail and we may just have to find another way of doing it. Just take your time. Already starting to fail. And it's another weekend actually. Last weekend was incredibly frustrating trying to get these front brakes done. And I'll show you why in a second and how I solved the problem. But we got them all apart. When I went to press out the bearing on one of the uprights, on one of the knuckles, the race inside actually did not move and all the bearings just blew out the bottom of it, so the race was stuck in there. The other one came out fine. It took a bit of work, but it came out. But this is how I actually had to get the other race out, and it's a little trick that I learnt over the weekend, like last week, and I used it today and it was perfect. Let me show you. All right, so this is the bearing, the inside of the bearing that came out, but I actually had to, forgive the welds, I actually had to do it a few times because it was so tight. Put a weld bead around the inside on both sides. Now I do use flux core wire. It's what came with the welder when I bought it, and it's working perfectly well for me. So I had to go around a couple of times. The theory is that as it heats up and the weld melts the metal inside and gets in there, as it cools it constricts. The way I did to speed it up is because it was cast iron on the actual knuckle, and this is inside, I just clamped to the cast iron, welded around the inside, and then did it a couple of times. It wouldn't come out, so I put another, just turned up the power a little bit on the welder, welded around the inside and dipped it in a bucket of water and gave it a few taps, and it just literally just fell straight out. So there's nothing wrong with the actual knuckle. I'll show you that now. So this is the knuckle. As you can see, nothing wrong with it. I just used some anti-spatter spray because flux core wire does produce a lot of spatter. And if any spatter got on it, you just wipe it off and it comes off straight away. So that's all good to go. Now it's just a matter of pressing in the bearings, and they're in the freezer inside. I'm going to put both these knuckles in the sun for a little bit, warm them up, just to make it a little bit easier getting the bearing inserted, because we have to go from this way. Give them a bit of a clean up, and continue on with all the jobs to get these done. So now we can just push forward and build these things back up. All right, so while we wait for the knuckles to heat up, the bearings to cool down, I thought we might as well just get started into rebuilding our calipers. So this is one that's been cleaned. Okay, it's come out pretty well. It's not as filthy as what it used to be. It'll actually go really, really nicely together. So what we're going to do is, first thing we need to do is put all our parts together before we do anything, because obviously things screw into here. Like you got the slide pins and stuff that go in there. So we're going to match it all up. So what I normally do is, because it's been out of the car for a while, sits like that, okay? So what we're going to do is we've got our caliper rebuild kits here. Comes with all the rubbers, everything like that. So what we're going to do is essentially take our old slide pins, rebuild them with new rubbers and seals, and then put them in the car, or put them in the calipers. So part number for this is, it's a Protex part 210E0091. Okay, if you Google it, they can be quite expensive. They can be up to $60 a piece, but it's better to put new seals and stuff in the car or in the calipers, so nothing bad happens when you go to brake. So I'll crack this open and have a look here. All right. So these actual seals down here don't actually look too bad on these pins, so we might just keep those ones on. Normally these would slide over, but I think I'll keep these ones because they're actually in pretty good nick. And you've got our other pin here. Always have a good bunch of rags that you can use on this. Alright, and we pull out our 2 seals for them, 2 rubbers. So these will push in like so, and then seal up over the top down there. So what we're going to do is pull this one over like so, and that will slide in like that. We will be greasing up these things. The reason why I don't put grease on it first is because you don't want too much grease on it. And I'll explain why. It can actually cause a bit of a vacuum effect inside the actual chamber that these pins slide into, which makes it difficult for the brake caliper to release. And just by pushing that rubber down and greasing up very lightly, this part down here, and on this one down here, is more than enough for what we need. And then the other 2 things we have is the seal, rubber seal, and the dust boot. Now, some people will not run this dust boot. It can be an absolute pain in the backside to put into the actual caliper. This seal is quite easy, but this dust boot is a pain in the bum. So it's up to you which way you want to go. I did put one of these on. That being said, I did try it. The first one I did try putting on, I did tear it, and then I had to buy another seal. So you got to be really, really careful how you do it. All right. So we're going to grease up. Well, first we're going to put the seal in. This seal, we're going to get a bit of brake fluid, and then just wipe around the seal and lube it up, and then stick it in. Make sure the chamber in there is nice and clean. Which it is now. All right, grab some brake fluid and we'll put it inside. So I have cleaned my hands before I did this. They look a bit filthy, but I did go inside and wash them because I have been handling all the other stuff, trying to keep it as clean as possible. Put inside here. Right, there's a little groove that this will sit into. Sometimes the best way to do it is to try and fold it in a little bit. I don't know if you can see on the video, but got one part in. Now it's just a matter of getting the rest of it in. Without pinching it. There we go. That now got our seal. There you go, our seal in there. And then I just go over that again with a bit more brake fluid. Before we put piston in. So that'll be our next step. Right, pistons here, again, brake fluid, bit of air just to lubricate it up, make sure it's nice and clean. Again, look, I'm doing this is the way I do it. There is probably a million different ways people do it. Generally, this is the sort of way you would do it. Alright, bit of brake fluid so it's lubed against the seal for safety reasons, so I don't pinch the seal. Oh, there's one done. Alright, for piss farting around, we got that in. Now, it's time to build up our slide pins for our go in here, like so. Sorry, down here. This will sit like so. Right, so the last thing you want to do is, before you do anything, is you don't want to put, I generally find, put this in last. You can put it in loosely, just so there's enough room for air to escape. Don't do it up tight. Now if these ones here, like I said before, we don't want, that'll sit there like that. We don't want to put heaps of brake grease on these, okay? What happens is when you do it, the brake grease actually sits down the bottom on the tip of it. When it sits in the chamber here, if there's too much grease, it actually causes a bit of a vacuum and makes life difficult for the slide pins and the caliper to actually work properly. So you just want a very fine amount of grease on them. So I generally just get a little bit like that. That could almost be too much. Don't do the tip down there. You don't want that one greased up. Like so. In here. Like so. And if you can push it down and it doesn't pop back up, there's too much grease in there. Okay. One here.
So wipe off the top. That's in there now. Right, so now these just go together. So we get our bolts here. These actually have different pins to my other set, which is interesting. Just noticed that. So pull that in. Perfect. So I'll do those up and get those all tight. So a 17 and a 14. There we go. Perfect. Now, screw our that's in there. That will stay there. And we've got our banjo bolt. Now this thing's filthy. I'll give it a good clean up. It still does have the copper washer on there, but I might try and replace that one. So let's get this old one off. Put our new one on. Perfect. Screw that ready to go on next time we need it. That one is done. That's all good to go now. So put some, it's all ready. So now we just have to do it the other one and have them sitting there waiting to go. Perfect. So the next thing we've got to do now that our calipers are all rebuilt is put our bearings in our uprights. Now, it's really not that big of a deal. Getting them out can be a pain in the backside. Putting them in is easy because you put them in from up here. All you've got to do is just put it flat on a surface and press them in. They are a fully sealed bearing. You generally don't have to punch in any races, lube up any of the bearings, grease the bearings, and then put them in and seal them up. Because they're all fully sealed, you just press them in and away you go. So I'm going to go get one bearing and see if we can't get it into this thing, because it means we're well on our way to doing what we need to do to get these things done. And there we have it. 2 knuckles with our seal bearings in there. Okay, lovely, lovely. Ready to go in the car if needed. I don't plan on using them, but it's awesome to have them there if I do need them. So now just got to clean up the hubs, push new longer extended stubs into them, wheel studs, and then press the hubs in here from the other side, from that way. But I've got to go coach my kids' basketball game, and I'll be back very soon to finish this off.
Well, we're back from our basketball game, our little adventure, and we had a cracking win, which was awesome. My lad played really, really well, which is fantastic, so I'm stoked for him. Now, I'm back into putting these hubs back together. We've run into a bit of a problem. Now, the first set I did that are on the car, they are the same wheel studs, the same size as come with a Hyundai Excel. So the knurl on the actual wheel stud is around 14.3 mil. Now, I have a set here that I thought would fit. Just a set just for a spare set. They don't fit. These hubs here, just for a spare set, they have a smaller actual wheel stud that goes in it. It's about 12.8 mil. So I have, instead of using the spare set that I had there, I'm gonna have to order a new set. So I just placed an order for those from Nice Products. They are, I think it was S3720 for the wheel stud. You don't need NS if you just want the studs. NS is for nuts and studs. If you just want a stud, just use S3720. That'll give you the right stud you need for these hubs. And you're back in business. So now I've just got to wait for them to arrive, hopefully next week. I'll turn up. So I've got 8 of those coming for me, ready to stick in there. Still the same thread on the wheel nuts, so it's all good. So now I've just got to put that aside and wait a little bit longer. So all that's left for us right now to do is put these, once I've got the studs in them, these will then sit on top like that. They'll be pressed into place, and they'll be good to go. It's the only way to do it. Obviously the hubs press into place into the bearing. Normally I run a very thin film of grease through the interior and on the exterior just to help it slide into place. It doesn't spin on that. The tolerances are so tight in these that it's just there for a bit of lubrication getting it in. And then we'll be good to go. And those knuckles will be set. So I don't know if I'll wait to do that. I don't know when those wheel studs are going to be coming. It'll literally be a case of just pressing the wheel studs into the hub and then pressing the hub onto the knuckle, which will take next to no time. So I may end up just ending the video and putting them in. But literally, new bearings all in, okay. For a spare set, they don't have to be super expensive. I think I picked up both of these for about $50 for the pair from Online Auto Parts. The ones that I've got in the car, they're about $100 a piece. But because we're only going for making a spare set, I just threw some, I guess, cheaper, but to be honest, they're probably made in the same factory. Some bearings in there. I probably could clean up these hubs a little bit more now since I've got a bit more time to wait for the studs. And then I have some brake rotors sitting just there. Our calipers are all built. They're sitting over there. And that means we'll have our whole thing ready to go. The only thing I will do is the nuts I use on the car, they use a internal hex to do them up. So we do have to trim off a little bit of the wheel stud. There's a siren coming towards the house. I usually about 15 mil off the stud. Otherwise, the internal hex to do the nut up won't have good enough purchase to actually do the nut up. So we trim those off, and then we just round off the end of the stud, so we don't cross thread, and we're away. So looks like now I've 8 spare studs that I can keep with me. Not that it's going to be any help if I break one. That's why I'm putting these together if I have any incidents at the track. All right, bit unfortunate that I couldn't complete it by putting the studs in, pressing all the knuckle and the hub in, and literally having it sitting there ready to go. But that's life. Sometimes things don't work out the way that you actually plan to. So now we've just wait for those to turn up, put them in, and get our stuff sorted, ready to go. And happy days. Got a little surprise for that back of the car. All right, guys, I will leave it there. I have a heap to do this car. I found out a big problem with this car that I have to try and address before we go to Bathurst. And it's an easy fix, and it's one that I wish I'd found it earlier, but it affects the handling of the car majorly, and we have to get that sorted. So I'm going to crack on to that now, start another video, and fix that all up, and I'll show you what that problem is next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.